Hi, everybody. Welcome. We are going to get started, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Welcome to our webinar. SKO is not enough, but really, that's not the meaning of the webinar. The meaning of the webinar is, more importantly, how to really drive the outcomes that you're looking to drive and how to make this type of event really successful at your organization and how you can drive momentum from this event throughout what happens post SKO. And so I'm going to get into introducing our speakers for today. First, I'll introduce myself. I'm David Lott. I'm the head of strategy here at Spekit. I've been here 6+ years working with customers like Michelle. We've partnered on several occasions historically. And basically, my role has been supporting our customers, supporting all different types of environments and businesses and verticals, and really strategizing with them about their initiatives, which include big events like SKO. Right. So I'm excited to share a little bit about my insight there. But more importantly, I'm excited to have Michelle Afshar here from Darktrace to share her experience and a lot of it in terms of really what SKO used to look like and what SKO can look like. And really what we want you all to take away from today is how you can really make a lasting impression and drive, again, the right outcomes and the right momentum from the event that you're planning and spending so much time doing. Michelle, I'll give you a moment to introduce yourself.
Well, first, thank you, David, for having me and Spekit for having me. I am a longtime customer, repeat customer, and not because you guys forced me, but because I do love Spekit. So it's amazing to be here. I'm also a retired party girl, which is probably why I love SKO much. An annual, paid for, huge party. You're going to see me there. I'm currently the head of global enablement at Darktrace. I've also run enablement at Zoom, Palo Alto Networks, a bunch of other companies. But for the last, we'll just say 20 plus years, I have been helping enable teams. I've been in sales. I've been at the SKOs as an attendee. And then for the majority of my career, I have helped plan them and really love enablement. My first job, I'll tell you this, was selling cars. So 25 years ago, I had no idea I would be here with you, David, talking about how you can create a killer skill, but I'm super excited to be here.
It sounds like we have to do a separate webinar just on your history and job
You
history.
can sell a car, you can sell cybersecurity, any kind of cybersecurity tools and software, but there is a correlation there.
There is. There absolutely is. Well, that's awesome. Thank you for joining, Michelle. We are excited that you're here to talk about this because obviously you have such a great background and history and rich experience with what this can look like and really how to execute it properly. I'm going to do my best to tab along with the slides, even though I have stitches and some hand sanitizer in my hands. So I'm going to do my best. If I skip ahead, just tell me and I'll make sure I go back. Well, let's move on right ahead and talk about sort of why we're having this conversation, right? We are at the point where everybody is already probably pretty far along with planning or knee deep in planning right now for their SKO events and what their SKO events are going to look like. And on average, most organizations invest anywhere between 2,500 and 5,500 per attendee. That's a significant amount of money. So if you have a 150-person event, you're spending anywhere between 375,000 to 825,000 just for the baseline event. Not only that, Michelle, this is probably something you know very well, but planning starts 4 to 8 months, even longer in your case, which we'll talk about. For this event. So it's resource intensive, it's time intensive, it's cost intensive, right? And so a lot of what we want to talk about is how do you make sure that you have an impact with all of that, and it's not just this one-time event.
So I will say that everything that we're going to talk about today, I don't want people to hear where I came from or where I am today and think this only applies if you have thousands of people attending. Everything we're going to talk about really can be for a 20-person sales kickoff, which I've also done before, which is actually harder than a 6,000 sales person event. So to your point, this is an expensive investment for most companies. If they decide to do it and they bring people together, there's a lot riding on this event. And it's a highlight of strategy. It's all the executives getting to get on stage. All of a sudden, everybody's inner diva, their every desire they've ever wanted to have is going to be your problem. Plus, you have to train people. Plus, you have to make that $800,000 that they gave you or $5 million worth worth it to them, right? And that's a massive task. Saying that this takes 4 to 6 months to plan is is easier said than done. I think sales kickoff really starts a year, if not ahead of that. You should be thinking about what are we going to do, far in advance. And we'll kind of go into that. But my philosophy is this is the start of a year-long enablement cycle. And so using kickoff as just a party, you're not going to get anywhere. No one's going to remember anything. Maybe they're going to say you had it was fun and we got together. But if you truly want there to be an investment that you feel and you see in the year, if you want people to make memories and network and bond and close some deals and do some great things, it's the it's the beginning of a year-long plan. And so we'll go into kind of how that works and what that looks like and how you can do that. But I think if you shift your mindset from, and I've been there, right? All I can think about is what are the breakout sessions and who are the speakers and what is the swag and how do I get buses to take everyone to whatever club we're going to go to. But if you can look past that and say, this is the beginning of what I'm going to do, and I have a plan after that, I think it sets you up for a really great event.
Yeah, and I think you and I, when we started talking about this, you had a great comment, which was similar to what you just said, but I just want to call it out, which was more direct in saying, if you want to have a cultural get together, then call it that, right? And don't sort of mask it as a sort of a corporate event that's driving initiative, right? They can be both, right, if it's done well, but if you're really just focusing on the one, then don't mislabel it, right? And I think that also really transcends down through how the attendees respond, react, and actually retain what's happening at that type of organization. Um, let's talk a little bit about the old school SKO. I think we both have experiences with the old school SKO. We've both been in many banquet halls with with many trainers and many guest speakers and all of those types of things. But I want to hear more about your perspective, really what's changed, what it used to look like.
I mean, 20 years ago, so was when you launched the products internally, like for the year. We didn't have, monthly launch cycles like most companies do now, right? There's a lot of things coming to all of our sellers. Every company is optimizing, they're modernizing, they're scaling, they're launching, everyone is in it to win it. And right now, you have so much more noise for your sellers and your teams. But 20 years ago, it really wasn't that bad. We had some old school methodology trainers come in. We had some really bad like scrambled eggs outside, and we got everyone together, and your product officer and your CRO probably had some weird tension in the back because they both wanted the limelight to launch something, but that was it. And David, what you said I think is really important is it was a lot easier to plan the objectives of an event where there was less to focus on. The difference too is they were known to be parties. Like I've been into organizations where they said, Michelle, invite the partners, invite these, get this going. I've partying with Pitbull and Flo Rida and Nelly. Like that's a party, right? That is a party. That's very different than launching methodology and playbooks and all the things. But
Right.
call it what it is if that's really what we're going to do. So I think we've changed. I do like things better now. I will say that. I think there's a world where you can do training, you can learn, you can network, you can have fun. I think people like connecting, especially with some of us being more in a virtual world or maybe never having met our coworkers until we go to a kickoff. Um, I think the world itself, like, it can use a little bit more connection, and if the teams are intentional in creating that culture and environment and different situations, like it truly brings people together. And I think so much of what is fundamental has also shifted and modernized. So, you might be doing you think it's like a discovery training for the thousandth time, but so much has changed that it's new content for everyone. So I'm glad that we're not doing the old school sales kickoffs anymore. I love this kind of way that we're shifting and transforming and modernizing our events.
Yeah, and that's something we talk about a lot at Spekit, and in particular is the rate of change and how constant it is, and the cognitive load that takes in when changes used to be, they used to be sometimes yearly, then sometimes they were biannually, then they became quarterly, then monthly. Now, weekly and even daily, we're seeing these types of changes. And if you think about how users have to then, or your teams or your account executives then have to translate all of that change into what they're doing, it's a lot, right? And I will say, hopefully, they've made the eggs better at this point.
I know, it's hard with catering eggs. I'm not gonna lie.
It's true.
Well,
It's true.
it's
Michelle, do you wanna talk about what happens without proper planning?
So we party, we get everyone together, everyone hugs, safe travels home, and then you go back to your desk and it's like it never happened, right? And I can't blame people, right? Even when I put out the Gatorade and the hangover kits in the morning for everyone, and even if you try to start at 9:30 to give someone a little bit of extra sleep, those are really long, packed days. And we know there's a retention curve of what people will actually remember. And the day they get back, they just go and do their job the way they knew how to do it before they went to the event. And I think we can all be honest here, like between us girls, that's just what it is. And so you'll see that if you don't plan for that, if that specific action is not built into your post-SKO reinforcement and planning, everybody just goes back to normal. And that's okay. If you guys are okay with that, if your leaders are okay with that, if they're already doing a great job, that might work for what you want to do. I think where you can be really successful is start to think about week by week after people come home. What will they remember? What will they need? What will they reach out for? How can I serve them up something? What can I remind them or reinforce? Or what will they use now that they're back at home? But that has to really start. You have to start that design when you're planning for the event. So 6 months before the event, you should start to be thinking about day one, week one, month one, when everyone goes back home. I think that's where you can start to really refine. Do the messages land? Do the things that were taught land? Where the breakout sessions where we worked so hard to put that content together, and the workshops and the activities that people did? How do we bring those back up, right? And I think if you can be thoughtful about that plan, you're not going to run into some of the pitfalls that we all know we run into.
Yeah, and I've seen a common one is like everyone gets back and it's almost like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna build that stuff for you now," right? And the lag time is so great from the initial introduction and learning of that content to when they're enabled that again, they're already doing what they used to do, right? And so now you have a second wave of change you have to try and catch up with, which we all know just doesn't work. Um, so yeah, no, and I think you are setting it up really well in terms of the timeline of how you're thinking about these things. And what we want folks to take away from today is not that you're too late, right? Not that like you missed Michelle's window and thanks for the webinar. It is really, we're going to give you ways to think about this and take this back to what you're actually driving today to make a difference and make an impact and make sure that you are checking these boxes and having these types of planning thoughts and actions that you can take away. Michelle, what actually drives transformation at a SKO?
So when you think about massive change, there's like a learning curve and there's a curve. I forgot what it's called, but I should know this. I'm actually embarrassed that I can't
Forgetting
remember
curve? The forgetting
yeah.
curve.
Well, it's not even the forgetting curve, but there's this like cycle that people go through where they see change and they're like, I don't want it. That's not for me. I can't do it. Oh, wait, it's working. Oh, look at me, I've transformed, right? And there's this whole curve that people go through, and and that's okay. But you also need to put that into how people learn and then what you deliver to them, knowing they might be in one of these stages.
Right.
And so if we think about transformation, reinforcement becomes how you actually get the change to stick. So regardless of how hard it is for somebody and regardless of how they might feel about it, if you continuously come to them in the ways that they need it, you remind them, you give them a way to practice, you share certain things that can help them feel confident, you will start to see whatever behavior you want to change, whatever transformation you want to see in your field come to life. Um, I think the thing that people really kind of think about is when they think about reinforcement, it sounds like reminders. Reinforcement is not just send an email and remind them of the event or send them the link to the recordings and the decks that you used in the breakouts. Reinforcement is really around making sure that they understood a concept that was taught in the kickoff, that they get a nudge. Like, do you remember this? Did your peer David used our account planning template and was able to do this amazing thing? We're seeing wins in this group of people who are applying. That's reinforcement. Is sharing information that kind of triggers that learning that they had maybe a couple months before. And then
Yeah.
you need to let people apply it. So they did it at kickoff. You remind them and you give them examples. But like, should we still be practicing? Should we maybe deliberately and intentionally give people time to, hey, it's been 2 months. Let's go over that pitch. Let's make sure that you're still using it and make sure that like you're actually still talking about the things the way we want you to talk about it. That's intentional application. And it's okay that it might be 6 weeks out because that might be the right time for them to try it up again and have that conversation again. And I think the other thing people forget to do when they talk about reinforcement is you can't just have your leaders be the ones sending it out all the time. You got to use the big dogs when it's necessary and maybe less frequently so that they know when it's important. So getting buy-in, getting the leaders bought into this, that's good in the beginning. It's good in some of the, like a check-in, but making sure that there's visibility into the follow through, making sure there's leaderboards, making sure data goes out to the leaders and that the leaders are reinforcing it is going to help you when you come to this like reinforcement and transformation post a kickoff.
Yeah, and I think what's really important thematically that they're talking about is the idea of change enablement, and really what that looks like. And I think two really critical elements to change enablement. One is timing, right? You can't just release a change in the middle of anything and expect people to be able to absorb that type of change. And kickoff is the right timing, right? And then the other really is, I think, something that you're talking about, which, yes, the leaders and the leadership buy-in is important, but what's also really important is that peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
And you get that peer-to-peer exposure at kickoff. And then to your point, it's then taking that peer-to-peer exposure into the actual practice and like those leaderboards, like giving people insight into, hey, your teammate used this account planning template. All of those things are those peer-to-peer drivers that really do drive the change, right? Otherwise, it just becomes enablement saying, did you do the thing? Did you do the account planning template? Right. And it's not
Well,
going
I
to,
think I will add one thing, David. So you're
yeah.
right. You're right because you're at Spekit, and yes, you're absolutely right. And I think this whole thing crumbles if you don't use the managers. I don't
No,
think should be the people that are reinforcing anything. Maybe in other worlds, like being just like the pretty face and the cute bubbly team is like not looked at as great. In this kind of a situation, I'm like, go be the voice, go be the vehicle that gets them there. But this is transformation happens in a leadership level, not at enablement. So the only thing I would add there is when I talk about follow through, like you should, in part of your reinforcement plan, is that your frontline leaders weekly are coaching to what you need them to coach to. They're asking the questions you want them to ask. You're going to help them. A lot of times, and I see a question in the Q&A that's saying like, what if your leaders aren't bought in? and it just needs to come from enablement. They're right from the emails come from enablement and the content comes from enablement, and maybe I can give you some suggestions, put it together. But there are things that I absolutely need the leaders to do, and I'll tell them, like, I've done the work for you. You got to send this out. This goes in your one-on-one coaching. This is the dashboard I need you to look at when you have your meeting, and you kind of help them be the voice of it and really become the owners of change and transformation. So it's a little bit of a behind the scenes thing that you can do for the leaders, but that's also how you use them.
Yep. I totally agree with you. I accept your yes and it's perfect because it's actually a conversation that I have with a lot of our Spekit admins and experts who are in that role, which is, you're right. You have this dependency, right? Which is I need people to go drive this and I need support to make these initiatives actually come to life, right? So it's a great call out. Um, so you have quite an extensive reinforcement plan. And it's something that we felt was really worth sharing here, because it really is awesome. And I think, I think I even learned a ton just understanding how you think about this and how you approach it. So I'd love for you to take us through sort of what that looks like here. I guess starting in the beginning.
I know it's crazy. So if you're like, this girl does way too much, you're probably right. But here's the thing. Nobody cares when nobody is going to tell you no to this. And if you're an enablement leader and you're talking about kickoff and you're saying how you're going to deliver an amazing event and you tell them that you have a 14-week reinforcement plan, I'm going to tell you right now, the confidence they have and the investment they're making goes through the roof. And it's not, and none of this is fluff and none of this is just to make enablement look better, but it truly gives executives confidence that it's not just a one-time spend and that I'm going to get a return and that my enablement team is on it and they have a plan before we leave for the event. You look really good. So I wanted everyone to use it. I wanted everyone to get a glimpse into what it could look like. You can change this based on, your org, your teams, your leaders. I am excessive. I love a good email. Everything I do at Darktrace is pink. Like I run weekly calls with a pink background and like I am 1000% myself. So make it your own. But I just wanted to show different ways that you can use this plan. And you can change it from 14 weeks to 52 weeks if you want to. And you like really want to outshine me. I'll take that template back if somebody comes up with it. But maybe we can just kind of go into like week by week
Yeah.
what I is important.
Let's do it.
So you come back from an event and my team hates this. So I would like to say sorry to any of my former teams because I know you're supposed to rest after kickoff. And I'm like, no, we hit the ground on Monday and we got all these things launching. And I know that's exhausting and it's a lot to ask as a leader, but it also makes sure that the event goes off exactly how we want it to go off. So you get home and it's like newsletter, right? It's awareness. It's all the things you missed, or maybe you wanted these decks and it's keeping that momentum live. You can send out little surveys like, did you like the eggs? Were they good? Because we always on the food, not on the sessions.
Right.
But it's also making sure that like your managers, your sellers, everyone who went knows where to find the things that you just shared. When you come back from an event, you might say, hey, I really love that slide from product. I really love that slide from marketing. The first week back is typically just reminding them of all the cool new things that they have. Where can they access it? How can they get a hold of it? So that's, that also takes prep. Whether it's an LMS or a site that you build or your intranet, that's also got to be ready to go on that Monday when they come back so you can point people to it. When you go into the following weeks, I think what becomes really important is starting to do some of that reinforcement, some of that like activation, giving people a chance. So I'll give you an example. This year, we launched 3 new playbooks at Darktrace. And these are like they're too far to go get right now, but these are my babies. They are hundreds of pages. It is the first time we've designed exactly how we want the teams to work and how we want managers to coach. And so going into weeks 3 and 4, open those bad boys up and little Easter egg hunts and little activities that we wanted them to actually open the book again. They got them. They were so excited. I know they went home and put it on their desk. They might have opened it, but now I need them to open it. And we made it peer to peer. We made it manager, part of the manager coaching framework. So the leaders had to use their manager playbook. And it just got everybody using that book again when I know it just went and sat on their desk.
Right.
Um, we have a little bit of we like to have a little fun, so like knowledge checks and make them fun and make them funny. We have You could do virtual sessions, you can do webinars, you can send a 3-minute reminder in an email or a video or a how-to or a refresher. Like there's so many ways that you could do this, but picking a topic that you taught and going the next level down in week 3 and 4 is where you can start to bring the teams together and get them to apply what they were taught a couple weeks before.
Absolutely.
Um, so we're gonna go through every single week. You guys can stop me if you think I'm insane. That's fine. You can put that in the comments. I won't be offended. But what I wanted you to see is there's different modalities when you think about reinforcement. Think about designing it for like the type of communication you want. So is it a email? Is it a live training? Is it e-learning? What is it? Who is it for? Because you might not need to reinforce the same message every week, every time with every single person. And people do want tailored information. So the audience becomes really specific in this plan too. Now, this is a cute version for a webinar, but the one that I showed them was super comprehensive based on role, based on, which breakout tracks they went to, but really start to tailor who the audience is. And that'll help you figure out who should also send that email. So sometimes it's enablement, sometimes it's the sales manager, sometimes it's getting my CRO to send something. Sometimes it's in a company newsletter because I want everyone to remember something that we did. But truly designing the what are we doing in this week? Who is it for? Helps you figure out then who should send that out or who should lead that training as well.
Um, I think this we can answer one question sort of on the fly here, and I'll get to the other one in a minute or two. But curious about the playbooks. Tell us more about those.
Like in general, that
Like, Chelsea
I
wanted
did
to know,
have
like,
great before, and now I have a lot. That was fun.
how did you build them? Like, what are they?
Right. So playbooks can be considered anything at any company, and I've done this multiple times. And sometimes they're a mix of um, sales specific focuses, or in this case, what we did at Darktrace is we actually launched our mission, our values, who we are in the market. We identified and we like documented who are our main personas, and we had them like a sheet for each person. We talked about our partner strategy and exactly how we engage and how we co-sell. We went into medpick and sales process stage by stage. We went into use cases and scenarios and upselling. Like this thing covers, when I say Bible, this thing covers every single thing that a seller and somebody in our go to market team should know how to do. We have a glossary of terms, we have templates that they should be using. So it's a very specific way that we want our sellers to run and own their business. We also have one version for the managers. So um, just because you know what the sellers should do, you also need to tell the leaders how to lead their team. So that has that specific manager coaching framework and how to lead their teams and one-on-ones and the cadence that they need to have and their operating rhythm to run their teams. And then we had one for our customer success. So post sales, like what do you do? The deal is closed and everything's done. Well, now how do you make sure that that customer is happy? So that is what we launched. But some companies use a playbook as just like do this, say this, leave this with the customer. So I think it could be a
Right.
mix of a lot of things.
And one of the other questions there was a follow-up, like, did enablement do all that, or was there a go-to-market team involved or anybody else involved in
It,
collaborating?
We are a small, mighty group of maybe 40 people who are not trauma bonded through this experience. It is a mix of our executives, our sales leadership teams, our marketing teams. Enablement owns, delivers. It is live. We built a live site. We use AI to help our teams. We use Spekit to make sure that it lives now in Salesforce. There was a lot of work that went into it. So it was really a collaborative effort. And it was like a year-long project before we even got to the kickoff to launch it.
It's exciting.
When you go into kind of the later weeks, I think what happens here is making sure. So for me, what was important is when we left kickoff, within those 14 weeks, I was getting everybody ready to get a certification. So there was a massive investment in these playbooks. I was reinforcing a topic. I was sharing wins. We were sending out micro learnings. We were having webinars. And then the whole point was getting them prepared that in the following weeks, they were going to get certified on this Darktrace way of selling on our playbooks. And so that's how this plan was designed. And that's what I mean by I knew that 6 months before the event. I knew I was going to launch playbooks. I knew that if they just went home and I didn't have a plan, they are just going to be decoration. And while they are beautiful, we needed them to stick and we needed them to use them. And so so getting that to the team and like aggressively kind of mapping out that journey by role was really important. That's what you'll see in this. And then I think if we go into the last weeks, it's making sure that they can actually um, get those certifications and you can report back. And so for me, being able to go to the execs who gave me, I wish that it was $850,000. It was a lot of money. But when I can go back and say that your go to market team is certified on the playbooks, like stamp and done. And like I did it in the time that we said that we were going to do. And these are the amount of people that did it. And here's how it's impacting and here's how it's improving performance and productivity and all the things. Like that's how you get your leaders to help you next year, right? That's how you get buy-in. That's how you get a seat at the table. Is like we plan early and we plan for the next quarter after an event, and we can come back to you with the data, with the metrics of why it worked and why it went really well.
I think I froze. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You just have
Great.
a frozen
Let's start
face.
my camera for a second, see if that comes back. I do think these are all incredible points. I think one of the things I would love to ask you is you can measure, right, the certifications, like everybody's now certified. How do you then tie those to the KPIs that you're driving? Like how do you then turn that into you mentioned performance. So I'm
Yes.
just curious how you actually take that and say, and these initiatives that these are tied to are actually here's how our reps are performing now.
This webinar is on SKO, but I would love to do that's a whole other can of
Right,
worms.
right.
When we designed the playbooks and when we were thinking about launching them, there was an entire initiative around metrics and just like it's more than adoption, right? Because you're gonna see productivity, you're gonna see people close deals faster, they're gonna create larger deals, they're gonna add more products. Like we had somebody asked me, I saw like, did you have product information in the playbooks? And we do, but it's really focused on segment and it's focused on a platform. It's not just like detailed product training lives on our academy and that's somewhere else. But there's specific focuses that I want people to have and messages that I want them to be able to say to their prospects and customers. So a lot of our metrics were aligned to if they understand this new playbook, they will apply it in this way, and you will see a direct correlation in ramp and productivity and deals being bigger. So those were defined based on the playbook that was built.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. It's a whole other webinar, but I do think just even mentioning that it's important when you think about how you actually do this planning up front, because it does tie to a lot of those actual initiatives and the outcomes that you're trying to drive, which is how you then are informed to design what you need to design, really, right? Versus like we built all this stuff, let's go figure out how to measure it.
Yeah.
Like it's right, cart before the horse.
Yeah.
Um, We'll answer some questions in the Q&A. I think there's some good ones in the chat that we can get to, but let's get to some key takeaways here from the presentation and from everything that you've shared, which is extremely valuable. We have a lot of comments with folks asking for this type of template or at least these slides for the takeaway. So I think this is resonating well.
So the one thing I'll tell you is even if your SKO is in January, you can easily right now build a 6-week reinforcement plan and no one will know that you didn't have it. So go back and figure out what that is. And it can be a mix of quick emails, quick reminders that you ghostwrite for your executive team. And that will help you drastically. So I would say like, it really does bring like a high level of quality to and put a bow around an event from an enablement output and standpoint. The other thing I think that you could do is like really think about real world live examples And when you do the reinforcement, getting people out of their day to day to actually practice the thing that they did at kickoff, it's a reminder. It's another application. There's so many studies that say when people have a chance to practice, like they remember things more, they're gonna be more successful. Like that, again, a whole other topic for another day. But getting people to actually apply and practice what you taught them over a period of time is really how very busy adults learn. So building that into your plan, I think will help all of you. And then um, I I know this is recorded, and there's probably people here that will. It's fine. I'm going to say what I want. You can tell people what to do. Like if you do your enablement planning and your SKO planning really well, and you put together this plan, and you can go and tell the leaders, "I'm doing all of this, and I need you to step in and do this. But I wrote it for you, and I have a starting point for you, and I need you to be engaged. And if you want your teams to really take this training to heart, I need you to show up." I think it's okay to say that and I think it's okay to have that confidence, especially when you've built out like a solid plan. Um, I don't take like sometimes they don't help you because they don't know how. And I really think that's most of the time. And so my leaders now, I mean, I come with a deck that they should use in their team meeting. I've already written the email for them. I tell them exactly what I need them to do. They're gonna change it. But
Mhm.
for the most part, they go use that thing we built them. So sometimes I think in enablement we get frustrated, like we don't have buy-in and they're not helping us. Just do it for them. Like they're just go do it for them. And it's okay that they took the credit and they look like well, how are they look? They're gonna want you to help them more. So just I think a little bit of that can go a long way for enablement in the reinforcement and really put it on the frontline manager. Sometimes we go too high and your executives are there on stage, your executives are out, doing what they need to do. But that frontline manager is an extension of the reinforcement plan. Prep them early, get them on calls before and after kickoff. Make sure they know what you expect of them, how you're going to help them, how you're going to give them everything that they need. You're going to prepare them, but really make sure they're the ones taking those messages out to their teams. And that I think that'll go a really long way. Um, and if you need any like wild ideas of like how do I make my SKO better, or what are sessions you've done or topics you've done, send me a message, send me an email, LinkedIn. Like I love a fun event. I love a memorable event. So if you're stuck anywhere, I'm happy to help with things like that too.
I think another webinar topic for us, which we have many now in our series, is leader enablement. I think it's like a different
Oh yeah.
version of what you do, but it's so important. And you've been talking about it this entire time, but it's such an important aspect to what enablement does. I think it's a big theme. Also, I think you're right. The frontline managers are so important in driving this because they're the ones closest to the
Yeah.
actual activities also. Like the executives are not actually doing the things, right? They're only talking about them. And to
Yeah.
your point, they talk about them on stage, but they're not going back and applying those, themselves, right? So it really is the frontline leaders who need to be the finger on the pulse in that scenario. And as we mentioned, like this is something that happens at SKO, but the changes that are taking place, the changes that are being administered are so frequent that again, reps are faced with that cognitive overload of there's a lot of information now for me to understand. There's a lot of information for me to go apply. And so I think, even thinking about the different platforms, the different sort of things that exist out there, right? Somebody did ask about Spekit. So I will say, right, Spekit, the idea of Spekit is being able to actually reinforce a lot of those concepts in the flow of work without somebody having to leave necessarily the screen or system that they're in to go get an answer or to type it into Slack or to Teams, right? Or to go to Drive and try to find the kickoff deck from SKO, right? Like those are all things that reps don't do in their day to day. And so having the ability to also have the content that they need to be successful and reinforced regularly is vital, right? So
Yeah.
even if you have all of these things, right? We talked about the forgetting curve. If they don't apply it, to your point, the practice is important because then they're applying it. but then they need to actually do it on a call. They need to do it with a prospect. They need to do it in real time, right? And they need to have the right information, the right updated talk tracks, the right sort of market positioning, and Suzanne, the right product information, right? All of those things are important. And there's only so many ways to actually continue to reinforce that outside of live sessions. And so I do think considering how you're building content out, where that content lives for your users, and how they're going to use that in their day to day beyond these sessions is a really important consideration. And so, to the person who asked, how does Spekit help with all of it? That is essentially what we do. We do that daily, but we also do that with these types of initiatives, of course, really well. But I think regardless of where your go-to-market content lives today, I think this is a vital piece to your planning as well, which is where are these assets? What assets are we building? How do we make sure that reps know how to access the latest, the best, and the most up to date so that everything that you set up throughout this planning and SKO process is what they're actually speaking from, right? It's what they're actually doing and what they're actually applying.
So one thing I'll say is I think that we all know with like post COVID, and I feel like we're in this like ask Alexa world, where people just stop being self sufficient and everybody just wants to answer quickly, like whenever they want it. Um, Knowing that when we designed this playbook launch, I knew that I couldn't just sit in front of, over 1,000 people and go page by page, open your book. Like, we're not doing that.
Right.
So the way that we made it work was they came prepared, and then they brought deals to the kickoff, and we left with over like 500 winning deal strategies that these teams put together. Now, it was not 8 hours of sitting through and flipping pages together. It was actually using the playbook to design winning deals. So what I would tell you is when you're thinking about kickoff, it's okay to make people do some pre-work because you want them to have some baseline knowledge going in, and you turn that event into live active workshops, positioning, role play, getting the teams to think creatively, getting them to work on actual deals that will change the pipeline and bring in revenue and everything that you want them to do. We can move away. Nobody wants to sit through 2 days of people talking at them. I don't care who you are. It is not fun. How do you change that model? How do you change what enablement does? What if the whole 8 hours is really on building real deals and building pipeline and doing what you need them to do, like live at the tables, right? Like, hey, actually, I don't need you to shut your laptop. I need you to open it and you're going to build a plan together. It's very different than what we used to do for the old school SKOs, right? You wanted everyone prim and proper and in their suits and smell like tequila, but they showed up. I don't I don't want that. I want actual deals that will close because of what we shared. And then remember that they can learn these concepts after. So you can tell them at the kickoff, but the learning can happen in your 14-week plan. And that's the difference is if you try to cram everything into that 2-day event, you don't have enough time. But if you take the time to build it out correctly and you have small modules after and you have specs that guide them, the minute they get home, you're going to see more success. So flipping it a little bit, and I know like it's probably like cringy to all the execs, like you don't have to do it all in those 2 days, but you should have a plan for when people come back.
Yep. Somebody asked about Sidekick, and you mentioned this. Ask. I can't say her name because I think she's in this room and she will respond. Alexa, age, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
a lot of what we're trying to do with Sidekick and what Sidekick functions as today is really a rep has a question like, hey, what is that thing? What is our new messaging? How do I position this to this persona? And giving them the summarized response without them having to then go read the full resource necessarily. So it's a lot of like, again, how we're reinforcing this content. And there's lots of ways that you can fast track that with some of these AI capabilities today. But I would love to get a couple of questions answered because I think you probably have some good answers for them. Um, Two of them come from Joey. So, and I think you probably have some experience with this if I know your business a little bit. One of them is we have a serious amount of products in our portfolio. So, like the amount of certifications that I'm imagining right now for our products would be a lot. Like, how do you deal with that because I know it's a very similar sort of thing in your world. And also the follow up to that is, does anybody have to get legal approval for slideware to distribute post-SKO? Because that impacts reinforcement time, and I'm wondering if you've dealt with that too.
I'm going to start with the second question first. We joke on my team that I'm always in Darktrace jail, either because of like IT security, legal security. I'm always in trouble. So yes, Joey, I am supposed to get everything approved, and I try my best, and it is difficult. And I'm just a risk taker. So if I can't respond to you from my email, you probably know why. But I will get back to you. I always get out of jail too. So that's one thing you should know about me. But I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just protecting the company. And I understand, especially when things go out and, it can go into anyone's hands at this point. So yes, that is a thing. Um, we have a large portfolio of products, and the last couple companies that I've been at also do as well. So they might have the product that they're most known for, and then a slew of other things that people need to know and need to sell. And when you go into cybersecurity, there are industry certifications, there are product certifications that we have. We're training and certifying customers and partners. So it becomes a massive certification kind of competency effort that myself, the team is really looking after. What I will say is this: you don't need to know everything all at once. And so when we build out certification programs and we think about when will somebody need that. When I look at a new technical person joining the org, we actually give them 2 years to get every single certification that they need to get. That might sound like a long time, but if you they need to ramp up, they need to know the playbooks, they need to know the baseline product, and then I need them to become experts in certain topics at certain times within their tenure at the company. So my point being, it's sometimes it feels like you have to design all the things all at once, but be really thoughtful of like when people will need to use it. And that can help you as you launch and certify and do the things. But we look at each role, we look at their tenure during the entire time. We look at when like certifications expire. For this playbook, everyone needed to get certified because I wanted that stamp of like, we did it. We know as an organization what to do. And we're going to do annual refreshes. It's not going to be an extensive recertification, but it's that this thing didn't die and we still use it. And they understand the updates and the any kind of iterations to the playbook that we now have. So certifications can be a big word and it means a lot of different things to people, but I really think it depends on the role and timing and when you need them to know certain things.
Yeah, that's important. Also for you, it's industry experience too, right? Like you have people that have sold cyber, and then you have people who have just sold, but never in that space either. So there's lots of combinations there. Um, there was another question that came in around having like a mid-year sales type of thing. Like, is there anything else that you do to bolster the time between SKOs?
So when my boss Dan now just probably looks at me and thinks all I do is ask for money, which it is. But I like to think that it's worth it. And we actually are doing a mid-year thing, and it's not a full scope. But it's really around product knowledge and then it's reinforcement. So while we launched the playbooks, we and people have been going through these certifications, they're going through the training, they're learning, they're using this now, all of this information that they have. What I really want to get them to do is kind of meet back up. Here's some new positioning we need you to have. And here's like a refresher on, for us, it'll be value selling and winning as a team. So I think you could do that virtually. I think you could do that in a series of workshops. I think you don't need to get everyone back together in a room and spend however many millions of dollars. There's ways that you can do that, but it's a great way to start the second half of the year, typically, where it's like, how can I get more of you to club? And that's kind of the theme for ours, right? They just announced club, and it's like, how many more of you want to go to that beautiful resort? Because
Mhm.
here's what's going to help you get there. So we're tying back to the theme, we're tying back to the playbooks, we're tying back to the product positioning and practicing and application. And we're going to do that for us in February. That gets us then ready because that's part of my kickoff planning. So we just actually started kicking off our SKO planning. And that's like day one is this mid-year kickoff, which then will lead me into the Big Daddy one when we go into
Right.
our new year.
Awesome. Any other questions in the chat or any other questions that folks want to ask that are on the line? You can put it directly into the chat or into the Q&A. Otherwise, I know we have a few minutes left. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. All right. Well, if nothing else is going to come in, we will not take any more time out of your day. But Michelle, thank you so much. I think at the very least, everybody on this call likely wants to come work for wherever you're working so they can have better eggs and meet Nelly and go to President's Club.
It's fun. I'm a retired party girl. Like I love a party, and if you need ideas, I promise some will be expensive and some will be like budget friendly, but I got you. I'm happy to help.
Awesome. I think you've given everybody a lot to think about. So thank you for sharing all of that with everyone and for sharing your insights. I think at the very least, there's a lot of really great takeaways here for folks, and I think you've seen that from the responses. So thank you so much for your time, and thanks for doing this with us.
Thanks for having me,
All right. Take care,
everyone.
everyone.